The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Berlin today. The Berlin, Germany stake and mission truly kept West Berlin free, and the Freiburg, Germany temple tore down the Berlin Wall. Photos of the Brandenburger Gate and border from Brosnahan's 1966 Berlin Today KBYU TV special. Timothy and Gail Brosnahan served full-time church education system young single adult missions in Vienna, Austria,
lecturing on the ancient scriptures of the Americas in most of all the universities in Ireland.
University of California, Riverside and Riverside Community College,
and a My Hometown, Salt Lake Service mission.
First, a background from February 1964, when Brosnahan arrived in Berlin, to the present, over 60 years. The Allied checkpoint Charlie, to travel through walled Berlin in the German Democratic Republic. The Berlin, Germany stake and mission kept West Berlin free. The Berlin mission's presidents, Percy K. Fetzer and Joel A. Tate, were the conduits through the Iron Curtain to the Eastern Bloc countries. One of Fetzer's and both of Tate's counselors, Henry Burkhardt and Walter Krause, were in the German Democratic Republic, East Germany. The East Germany members were supported with priesthood leadership, correspondence, over-the-counter medicines, gold for dental fillings, non-available hardware for chapels, temple garments, the Stern magazine, and other church publications, and Radio New York worldwide for General Conference. We took the Tate route with President Tate to bless the members in East Germany. Elder Brosnahan served as European Information Service Berlin Headquarters Director for President Ezra Taft Benson and the Berlin Mission Information Coordinator. Tim had a photo lab with an enlarger in the mission office and dried photos on cookie sheets in Sister Nancy Tate's kitchen oven, which photos and articles, with the assistance of Elder Dean Ruckert, appeared regularly in the Berlin daily newspapers and television evening show news. Brosnahan had permission from President Tate to photograph the Tate route to distribute many blessings to East Germany. The assistant to President Myron O. Bangerter of the North Berlin Mission joined President Tate, Dennis Hall, Tate's assistant, and Brosnahan on the Tate route before the Berlin Mission office closed. Brosnahan and Elder Dennis Hall continued after President Tate was released and the Berlin Mission offices at Am Hirschsprung 60A closed. On the Tate route, they could carry 6 copies of the Stern, Liahona, on their backs, under their belts, over-the-counter medications in their overcoat pockets, and wear up to 7 pair of temple garments. Brosnahan said, "I felt like the Michelin Man crossing the Iron Curtain."
On November 9th, 1989, the Freiburg, Germany temple accomplished at the Berlin Wall, U.S. President Ronald Reagan's directive. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Emil B. Fetzer, architect of the Freiburg Temple, was the first cousin of President Fetzer and Tim and Gail's neighbor in the Monument Park 12th Ward Diocese in Salt Lake City. Emil Fetzer often shared with them his spiritual experiences, taking Freiburg Temple films and building drawings across Berlin's border. It came time for the Freiburg Temple Open House, June 3rd through the 15th, and dedication June 29th and 30th, 1985. Brosnahan was the church's Salt Lake Area Public Communications Council assistant director from 1980 and director 1981 through 1989, and managed a property for KSL Incorporated and the Desert News 1968 through 1970. Brosnahan received official notice that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints would not be sending any media to cover the open house and dedication. Brosnahans received God's spiritual message that they were to report on, quote, the house of the Lord behind the iron curtain, end of quote. Reviewing Brosnahan's slide and filling in documents, they followed the Tate route. The Brosnahans took their 4 oldest of 10 children to Western and Eastern Europe, to 14 countries, 13 capital cities, and 21 museums. Brosnahan ended up with a speaking presentation to the British Sign Association, the same presentation he gave at the International Sign Association in Toronto, Canada. The itinerary was centered around their trip to the Free.TEMPLE. Gale said, quote, it was like following a blue sweatshirt all over Europe, end of quote. At first, Brosnahans were refused admittance to travel through the GDR, East Germany, but careful review of Brosnahan's documents, a supervisor exclaimed, alles ist in Ordnung. Standing in the long lines, the Free.TEMPLE presidency, led by Henry Burkhardt, the same person Brosnahan had worked with 20 years before, came out in their white suits to invite them to come in directly. They responded that they were interviewing samples of the thousands of persons in line from all over Eastern Europe. Visitors, too, had God's spiritual promptings when they heard only by word of mouth of the temple open house. President Burkhardt said the visitors stood in line for hours. The presidency had to tell the visitors to go home and return tomorrow, as they had to get some rest. The Freiburg Open House had 89,789 visitors that saw a slide projection, professional announcer presentation written by Elder G. Richter, missionary at the Free.TEMPLE, and music by the choir and orchestra at Temple Square. The Free.TEMPLE Open House hosted over 4 times the attendance of the advertised Stockholm, Sweden temple on the same weekend, with only word-of-mouth advertising. As they approached the front of the line, they were being ushered into the Free.TEMPLE by a young woman. Gale engaged her in conversation and asked her how she felt about having a temple in her own town. She immediately responded with enthusiasm, but her countenance quickly changed as she reflected, quote, but now I will never be able to leave East Germany, end of quote. Gale understood her circumstances. East German saints were allowed to leave East Berlin and travel to a nearby temple only once in their lifetime. Gale said, quote, I felt her anguish at being denied the freedom of movement that she so desperately desired. They went to Dresden. Klaus, a university geography graduate, who worked in mining, offered to be their guide. He could only answer their questions while in motion, for fear of being overheard. As gratitude gifts, they gave out credit card size, solar-powered calculators with square root and memory. Klaus showed them his bulky calculator. It had Nixie tubes, very outdated. They anonymously sent Klaus a subscription to the National Geographic. They received a letter. Lieber Tim, I suppose I'm receiving National Geographic from you. Please send it to Rudiger Thomas, who is allowed to receive it. He can pass it on to me. On the train, sharing a sleeping compartment, we were startled by the East Germany military with rifles, pistols drawn, and German Shepherd sniffing dogs. Naturally, Brosnahan tried to practice his German with them. Übung macht den Meister.
We went on through the night to Vienna, Austria. Brosnahan sent his story with a 35mm film canister for the church news section of the Deseret News and church publications, and mailed the package special delivery to the home of his priesthood direct line of authority, Regional Representative William James Mortimer, publisher of the Deseret News and church publications. For 2 years, Brosnahan had gone to Mortimer's home to get localized church press releases approved. Mortimer took the story and photos to Hans Ringer of the First Quorum of 70 and Temple Committee Chair. Ringer took the article to the Quorum of the 12 Apostles for approval. When asked, Daniel Ludlow said once to Donald G. Russell of Church Public Affairs that Brosnahan still has the record of getting something through church correlation. When Brosnahan was at Brigham Young University, Provo, Brosnahan was a photographer and wrote a daily KBYU TV article for the Daily Universe student newspaper. The editor was Don Cyril. They came together again, where Cyril wrote the article and Brosnahan provided the photographs for the articles in the Ensign and Liahona magazines. Tim received the contributing photo and editorial credits. The consolidation of East and West Germany saved the economy. In October 2001, as technical editor of a 100-year-old world's largest sign industry publication, Signs of the Times magazine, circulating to 117 countries in English, 26 countries in Spanish, and 13 countries in Arabic, Brosnahan's article covered the Viscon Convention in Dusseldorf, Germany. Brosnahan took a Schnellbahn to Berlin to explore the differences in bakery signs in the new East Germany from the sign President Tate and members of the High Council were standing under in 1966 to then 2001, 35 years later. It was explained to Brosnahan in 1966, quote, "The state owns the bakery and only a pretzel is allowed as a bakery sign," end of quote. Brosnahan's editorial in the December 2001 edition was titled, quote, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Sign?" Berlin elder Robert Sweeten, in his dental lab, placed a speck of the Berlin Wall in Brosnahan's gold crown. Thus, Tim's quotation, quote, "I carry a piece of the Berlin Wall to remind me of freedom and responsibility to speak out against repressive regulations." The bakery sign in former East Berlin seems to flaunt freedom of the pretzel. Elders Dennis Alchabal confirmed and Brosnahan baptized Detlef and Brigitte Schulze of the Charlottenburg ward. Gail read from letters sent to our family and friends and a record of our church education system mission to the Alpine German-speaking mission in Vienna, Austria, Young Single Adult Center.
Berlin, Germany Stake 50th Year Celebration. We reserved a room at a nearby hotel for Saturday night. After checking into the hotel, we hopped on a tour bus for 2 hours to see East and West Berlin. We then walked to the Berlin Stake Center to meet with the Berlin YSA Center senior couple directors, Elder and Sister Nelson, who were delightful. They gave us a tour of their wonderful facilities and shared how they handle the young adults and their responsibilities. This center has exactly the same average attendance as we have. Sister Nelson provided a wonderful lunch for us, and Elder Nelson shared his passion for teaching high school. That evening, we enjoyed the Saturday evening session of the Berlin Stake Conference. The area president and his wife spoke about children who go astray from the church. It was very heartfelt. The highlight of the evening was when a woman, Bärbel Schulze, of the Lankwitz ward, became totally animated when she introduced herself to Elder Brosnahan. He had taught her when she was 11 years old. The look of love and adoration was beyond description. Tears ran down all our eyes with sheer joy. This was one more glimpse of heaven. Sunday, we went to the morning session of the Berlin Stake Conference, where we experienced a new stake presidency being called and accepted. This is what was explained to the congregation. The area president and the former stake president met to decide on the new stake president. Each found themselves receiving the names of all 3 men, the new president and each counselor in order of their calling. They proceeded to call the new stake president and shared the fact that they also received the names of the counselors, which is unusual. The new president then requested that they not give him the names, because he also was inspired to know the names of his counselors. The new president said the first name, and the men rejoiced that it was the same name. Then the new president said the second name, and there was a discussion that it was perhaps a different name. But upon looking at what the new president had written down for the second man's name, they discovered that it was in fact the same name. The new president had just pronounced the name wrong. His chosen counselor was new to Berlin, and the new president didn't know him. We again found the Lord caring for the details of his church, just like he always cared for the details of our individual lives when we have sought his will. We felt gratified that the stake counselor conducting the stake conference sessions felt to acknowledge our presence in both meetings. This enabled people who knew Tim from the past to seek us out just before and after the conference.
Come to find out, the sister who sought us out after the Saturday evening session of the Berlin Stake Conference said to him, quote, "I have a photo of you on my wall at home," end of quote. Bärbel Schulze, maiden name Lippert, had been taught the gospel of Jesus Christ at age 11 by elders A. Franklin Adams, David C. Fisher, and Brosnahan in the home of stake president Rudy and sister Brunhilde Seehagen of the Spandau ward. She had been adopted and sealed to Detlef and sister Schulze and was the wife of the Berlin Stake executive secretary. Tim was reunited with still another person, Detlef Schulze, he had taught and baptized. Below right is a photo of the Schulze family with their adopted daughter Bärbel, who is married to the executive secretary. Brosnahan and Detlef embraced one another with tears streaming down their faces as Detlef whispered in Tim's ear, quote, "I have been active my entire life," end quote. Bishop Helmut Beers and his wife's grandson, Dagobert Beer, of the Berlin-Stake, was serving as president of the Institute of Religion and Young Single Adult Center near the University of Vienna, where Gail and Tim were directors, followed by another Berlin mission couple, Elder William and Sister Rusty Parker. Elder Schäffner, one of our Institute of Religion students at our Vienna Young Single Adult Center, was serving as a full-time Berlin, Germany missionary. Vienna, Austria, Young Single Adult Center, and Institute of Religion celebrating recent church mission calls. Brosnahan's fourth trip to Berlin with their first and 10th child. They visited the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, museums, East and West Germany, and attended church at the Berlin-Stake Center. Monument to the former Allied checkpoint Charlie, and Brandenburg Gate concert. The Church of Jesus Christ in Berlin today. The Berlin, Germany stake and mission truly kept West Berlin free, and the Freiburg, Germany temple tore down the Berlin Wall.